All right, dude. My second from last. My second from last, but not least. Second from last, but not least of this month that I am finally finishing. What's my last natal chart? The last one is compatibility. My second chart of the night, though. So that's not too many. Let's hide the name. Oh, I like that. Baba. Okay, let go like this. So I like to meditate when I do readings. Not the whole time. Depends. I'm very random. Headaches, what was that noise? You go downstairs? Okay. So yeah. Any squares? Okay, sun. Oh, okay. Ooh, and blue. You got what I have. You got that Pluto square nodes, sun square nodes. Interesting. You come to the right man, karmic astrologer. You got this Pluto and the sun square the nodes. That's big time stuff. And yeah, it's all that Scorpio energy. It's funny. I just made a post about Scorpions. Another super Scorpio chart back to back, baby. It's so funny. Like, um, with this month, there's been like what, like, let's say 10, I don't know. There's been like 10 charts that were all kind of purchased, um, basically like the same day, same 2 days. So I've kind of done them like not in a random order, but just based on what I was feeling that day, you know? Um, but not like analyzing them like, okay, I want to do this one, I want to do this one. Like just kind of like pop one up and in the order and say, okay, do I feel like doing this one now? Yeah, no, whatever. So it's just so interesting to me that like the order that I chose without even, trying to choose it. Um, I had so many, this always happens. Like I had so many similar charts, like 4 or 5 in a row. They're all like full moon charts and similar energies. And then the last two, this one and the one I just did, major Scorpio energies. So let's get into it. Where's my crystal? Where's my crystal? Let's use this one. Magical crystal, magical crystal. All right. So you have Uranus rising. So interesting. And Neptune. Wow. You are a magical human being, my friend. That is incredible. And Saturn too. And Venus. Wow. So a loaded first house. And a loaded 11th house. And so most of the energies are 7, 11, and 1. Which I mean here we've got Jupiter, Moon, Chiron series. Here we've got and those Cancer, Scorpio, Cap. So these oppose, and then you have this one over here, trends this one. So just very basic, like obviously like the Cancer energy and the Scorpio energy is going to going to be on the same team. It's water, very water heavy chart. You see the elements down here. Wow, I've never seen where there's literally there's no fire, no air, because this is not like when I'm counting towards the elements, I'm not necessarily counting it in the way that it would show there. Like that also takes asteroids, points like Black and Lilith, so forth. And even with that, there's none. And you see all these houses are empty. Um, so a ton of water, and then a ton of earth, or a lot of earth, right? So in the Capricorn, you got the three outers, Uranus, Saturn, Neptune, ascendant, Venus. All right. And then you've got your north node in air, south node in fire, which is very interesting. Me and you, we're born, yeah, we're born within a few months. I was born in March 90, so we have the same nodal energy, and you probably have Chiron, and yeah, so we have some of the same stuff, and we both have the square. It's very interesting of South Node and Pluto. So you've come to the right guy to understand about that. So basically, I like to kind of switch it up. Sometimes I like to start from like the big picture and kind of move my way in. And I like to start from within and move my way out. But a South Node in Leo, North Node in Aquarius, right? Here, the energy of that you're trying to go towards is very much moving away from the me. And people sometimes get that twisted because it sounds like it's like, oh, this person was egotistical in a past life. No, it's not that. It really is that as the North Node Aquarius, you are here to really, really be a force for humanity. You're here to, this new world that we are all co-creating. Aquarius is about community. It's about freedom. It's about, of course, it's very humanitarian. It's very, very much about how can we, how can we be leaders, especially with your first house, right? How can we be leaders in this new world, right? And how can we do our part to push things in a good direction? So, as we enter this age of Aquarius, it's these, it's people like you, right, who have this energy, and not just with your North Node. Your North Node is ruled by Uranus, which is rising. So, what I'll say though is a South Node in Leo, right, in the 8th. So we have so much in common. That to me points to like someone who is, karmically someone who definitely has had, a tendency karmically to be almost like a star, but in a more kind of esoteric, hidden way. So, something like astrology, right? Anything transformational. Being someone who's very powerful, right? Because the 8th house is very much about power. And Leo is also very powerful energy. Sometimes people with South Node Leo have had past lives, grandiose past lives sometimes, right? It's the sign of the prince, the princess, the king, the queen. So royalty is what the word I was looking for. So it can sometimes be difficult, I've noticed, for people, with these placements, right? It can be difficult to enter this lifetime. They're kind of, I don't like the word entitlement, right? Because it's not really what I'm trying to say. But sometimes with the Leo South nodes, there can be this energy that it's almost like, I don't like to talk about myself, right? But like sometimes it's just an example, right? It's just an example. I've heard like, it's unrelated, but like I've heard, I have clients, we have the follow up and the current astrology, and we'll talk, and they'll tell me about other readings they've done with other astrologers, right? I'm like, they'll just tell me, I had a reading with this guy, that girl, whatever. And I was blown away by how very, very well-known astrologers who charge a lot more than I do. Like this one client recently telling me how this astrologer, I'm not going to name names, so two of them actually, male astrologers, very well known, spent the entire entire reading, like comparing everything in her chart to their chart. And I was just like, what? I was like shocked. I was like, what the fuck? Like sometimes they give like little examples when it's just, to prove a point, right? Because I know my life well, if I have a similar placement. But and then she's like, and then the other half, both of them were like talking about politics and like about the vaccine and about how because of having a certain placement or something that I would, yeah, just like really getting, I was like shocked so much, right? That's unrelated. That's just a little a little something. Um, but what I was gonna say is that, with my Instagram, for example, right? Just quick little thing, and I really do not like talking about myself at all. But yeah. Um, so like, and this isn't arrogant, this is just purely like kind of trying to explain like South Node and Leo, right? Um, so two things actually, right? So a lot of times with the South Node and Leo, when they try to do things that are more about the ego, right? Let's say social media, right? It's a very obvious modern day example. Or even like let's say anything creative, right? Because there's this natural creativity. Leo is the inner child, it's the creator. So, if you have no fire in your chart in this lifetime, it could be very much the case that you've kind of you've kind of like mastered, like beat that level of video game. So a lot of times when I see people who have no elements, but then their south node is that, and I talk to them, they kind of, they're like, yeah. So like lack of fire, of course, is like linked to having issues with self-starting, with finding passion, with assertiveness, with action, all that stuff. But like, perhaps it's something that because your south node's there, which is the been there, done that in past lives karmically, maybe it's coming, maybe it's something that isn't as difficult. But what I was going to say, yeah, so I've definitely seen that with myself and with other people with this Leo South Node, North Node, and Aquarius, is that when they're like trying to create, for example, from a place of ego, like let's say like likes, like caring about like how many likes you get, how many followers you get, um, making music, for example, that's more about like getting, popular, um, it can get blocked, and there can be this frustration, right? Because the Leo, it's used to feeling special, right, and receiving praise. But then, the goal of using the South Node to get to the North Node with this, it's using that kind of innate creativity, that innate inner child ability, right, or ability to act as inner child, to do in leadership skills, right, to be able to really get to a place where what you're doing can still be very creative, right? But it's for the sake of authentic self-expression, like getting to know yourself, right? Which is obviously a big part of the chart with Uranus rising. You're someone who, um, does rebellious, does things their own way. Of course, it's Capricorn, so we'll talk about that in a sec. But yeah, like, um, it's totally moving away from the me, moving to the we, moving away from the physical kind of value towards the metaphysical value, right? Um, so like in the example of social media, it'd be like, how is the work I'm doing impacting other people, helping raise their consciousness, awareness, helping them with their life, so forth, right? Um, but what I was gonna say, like the example for my life, is that I like I don't consider myself as famous at all, or as even like remotely any I do have, what like what some would, and this is just an example of like a South Node Leo thing, is like I have like what 30,000, a little more than that, followers. Like to some that would seem like a good amount, but to me, and I mean this in the bottom of my heart, like it's nothing, right? it's really like, and it's not that I judge, like I'm like mad about it. Like I'm very grateful for it. But my point is that the South Node of Leo, because they've been accustomed to greatness, you know, in past lives, when they achieve things of that nature in this life, it tends to not feel so like it doesn't really feel like it's like there's typically no what's it called? Oh fuck, what's the name? And oh my god, how can I not think of this word, this term? Something syndrome, not ambassador syndrome, imposter syndrome, right? There's not like it's kind of like there's a feeling of like, okay, you know, I've been here, and that's what I'm saying about like, for me, it's like I don't consider it like, even if I had millions of followers, you know, like it wouldn't feel weird, you know, and that's kind of what I'm saying is like with the Leo. Okay, that's my part about my life gone, but I'll also speak about the Pluto square too. That's the main thing we have in common. But so yeah, it's really like the more you kind of move towards, and especially with the second house, it's like it's really about that, you know, value, right? Self values, and not relying on other people. Really in Aquarius, it's about like developing like a very authentic to you and just to you set of values, right? Um, Humanitarian, all that good Aquarius stuff. So yeah. So the fact that it is square Pluto is the #1 placement for past life trauma. Whether it's so what's so difficult, I'm gonna tell you honestly, when I first learned astrology, this was the most this is probably the most impactful thing I ever learned. I wrote about it in my book about my entire chart. The reason is because um and I've had multiple clients who had this, right? So we've been able to talk about it. And um you know, there can be this feeling, right? This feeling of trauma that isn't equated for with the experiences in this lifetime. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, we'll see what the whole chart says about that, but often it can be very confusing. Like imagine, like, you know, if this is the case for you, having all of the symptoms of trauma, but then looking at your life and being like, well, okay, maybe things weren't perfect with mom, things weren't perfect with dad, but it does not make sense. It doesn't equate to, you know, all the healing I needed to do and whatnot, right? So it's like that can be very confusing. And when you see that Pluto square the nodes, you know, a square of the nodes is a skip step. It's the ultimate skip step. Um, and you know, the unresolved material is really about like the deepest unconscious self, right? And there's a big urge for that real scorpionic transformation, which is hence why you have all this Scorpio energy in this lifetime, right? Mars, you know, Sun, Pluto, Mercury, like all in Scorpio, because Scorpio, as I just wrote my post, what I just write, I wrote like midway through my last reading. Scorpio is associated with darkness, but really Scorpio is just deeply aware of the truth, and the current truth is dark, very dark. Um, so it just goes to show that, you know, Scorpio energy is not able to repress. Like, of course, anyone can repress. So let me backtrack. Like, but Scorpio, it's very, you know, it's in line with its own personal darkness. And you know, while there's certain energies in astrology who can, you know, can kind of push away and be in this like kind of dreamy, like over idealistic kind of um you know, state, and just like maybe even be afraid to look at this, you know, the realities of the earth. That's why Scorpio can get this reputation of being dark and cynical and all that, right? Because Scorpio is just real. It's just raw and real, and it's very intense because it's a reflection of reality. So, you know, when you have this placement, right? Um, it really is like a fork in the road, in the karmic road. And it's this real battle between the self that's had to adapt, right, to this human condition, and the higher self, like ego and soul, essentially, right? Um, so it's all about just this deep transformation, and it's like the choice of either being like trapped in your attachments, and compulsions, or this, this deep soul surrender, right? So there's lots of exploration that's needed, right? In your chart, in your life, it's pointing to someone who's come here to really do their own healing. Probably the first part of life, tons and tons of healing, right? But that healing and that transformation leads you to be able to help and transform other people. So, yeah. And there's also this theme of power versus powerlessness, right? Which has played out over lifetimes of, having lots of power and then feeling very disempowered, and can show up in this lifetime too, different phases where you feel very empowered, feel very disempowered. And that's why there's this constant need to do the whole death, rebirth, transformation, letting go of people, places, things, behaviors, all that. This deep psychological self-analysis is needed. So that's why Scorpio has to be very, very, very honest with itself, because it has to learn to really identify its limitations. Because it's only through identifying the limitations in a realistic way, right, from the very depth, that they can know what they need to transform. So, eighth house south node, sometimes there can be like an overly dependence on different kind of what do you call it, powerful relationships, powerful alliances, powerful kind of even if it's something like astrology that gives you power, right? And the second house, it's about really finding that within yourself, internal resources. It can even be, like objects or teachings that are symbolic of that power, but they also are symbolic of this real transformation. So what can happen here is there can be like some kind of like deep psychological pain. It could be like betrayal. Some like when I've looked at this for myself, I've always like, well, mine's different. I have Venus involved, so love's involved, but I know that it's like this deep betrayal, that the soul hasn't gotten past, right? But like when I see this, sometimes I think it's a very mystical person. I think maybe about like witch, the witch hunt type energy, right? So it can be hard to trust when you have this, right? If the soul, like if the soul still is harboring memories of deep betrayal, then it can be very, very hard to trust people in this lifetime, right? So you think of the cynicism that Scorpio energy can have is a defense mechanism. Well, maybe it's just based on reality, right? Maybe they're just keeping shit real. So it's really that balance between the two. So you know, what I think about this, I think that you think about your life, think about the compulsions, think about the unconscious, like what could you imagine is a tendency of yours that's very, very deep, that you maybe have failed to overcome, right? In past lives. That is most likely what's being called upon. You also have your Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio, as I do too. So it's pointing to that potential, right? Of kind of when we talk about the lower and the higher manifestations of Scorpio, right? That you at your lowest vibration, right, can potentially really, the lowest vibration of Scorpio to me is when, like, let's say there's abandonment early on, or let's just say, whatever trauma, it's when that surrender and that death, rebirth, transformation it doesn't occur. And there's a level of stubbornness, and there can be this real possessiveness, this real, using like their emotional intelligence to manipulate, not being willing to surrender, not being willing to let go, and having like a very pessimistic attitude. That's just the potential, but that's here to be transformed, because that's what Black Lilith is. It's like, okay, this like, and it's also being able to really know exactly, it can be being power hungry, but knowing exactly what to say to just destroy someone, So yeah, there's just a lot of commitment that's needed for someone with this on a karmic level in this lifetime to really, really take that massive jump forward, which could be like the most massive jump forward for a soul. So, when we look at the fact that you have all this earth, that's very positive for that, right? Because earth is consistency. But it really is like pointing to like, inconsistency in prior lifetimes when it comes to, what we're dealing with here, which is different for everyone. So then you add that the sun is also, and Scorpio is also scoring the nose, and that is really, really just speaking to like how much of your current life energy is based on is based on overcoming this, right? It's based on overcoming it's a hero's journey. It's a Joseph Campbell hero's journey, right? And it goes back to this need to individuate, this need to find the authentic self, which Aquarius North Node, it's about the authentic self, right? I don't give a shit about what society says I have to be. Like, I'm building something based on me, not based on mom, not based on dad, based on me, right? So Sun Square North Node also could speak to some difficult karma with the father potentially. Not always though. I mean, just in my experience, I've seen that kind of go different ways. But so that means it hit the North Node last, because it goes like this. So yeah, it's resolved through the North Node in Aquarius. So all of this is resolved through your forward movement, right? So this is all like through your individuation, right? But really it's a core nature of your individuality and the core nature of your sense of personal meaning that that ultimately, like this is such a big part of that, right? So it really makes it so like this life is the critical one, right? With what I just said about Pluto, for like, the resolution of all the unresolved material. And I get this vibe in my mind right now, this very advanced soul, because only an advanced soul decides that they're going to take on all the, not all, but like, they're really, really deal with their personal darkness in this lifetime. Um, and in terms of like meaning, right? There can be a real sense of meaninglessness if one goes like lower South Node Leo is like kind of like obviously like kind of narcissistic potential like behaviors and more ego based. So there can be this real meaninglessness if that is where the energy goes. So it's like all about like having this very, very true to you personal vision that might even be, running in conflict with the people in your life, right? And that's a lot of times that's the purpose. Like, it's meant to be like that sometimes, right? So there can be like a lot of challenges when it comes to individuation. So speaking of individuation, you have this, right? You have ascendant with Uranus. So Uranus is the planet of liberation. Right? Uranus is about how do we how do I liberate myself from myself, right? Um so to have it is that exact same degree, exact same degree as the ascendant. Um you're not going to be, you're going to be someone that that wants to break away from tradition. If you had any tradition pushed on you, then that's difficult. And we see all these oppositions. Neptune, Saturn, Uranus, all these are opposing the moon. So the moon, it can't, it can represent the mother, but I always think of it as like the early nurturing, right? So, but I'll get into more about this because the first house is the self, the seventh house is the other. So, a lot of this is playing on relationships, but there's really like this real need for independence, and to kind of like break through, and it's a very electric energy, So, and super super intuitive. It can be like kind of creative genius energy. So when you have Chiron in Cancer, it can lead to someone feeling very misunderstood by their own family. But the fact that it's conjunct Jupiter is like someone who can really really be a healer. It's seventh house. Seventh house is the house of relationships, but also the house of science. If you're doing something like I'm doing, for example, like that is amazing to have that there, because you can have this amazing perspective of how, like it also gives you like this optimism, this ability to conquer your own healing, and then be able to help other people at their own. So, basically, you know, it just makes you very unique, right? And like unpredictable need for kind of this randomness in your life. But the thing, as a Cap rising, there is also this need for, you know, it's Saturn, right? So it's your chart's ruled by Saturn, which is also like conjunct the ascendant too, but 7 degrees away. Um, so there's this real back and forth between and restriction of Saturn, and kind of the more like traditional responsible, and the opposite of Uranus, right? Um, so any kind of like boring routine is not going to work for you. Like work wise, for example, like in life wise, you want it, you want to yes, you want to work you want to work hard, you want to like be diligent and all that, but you probably are so intelligent, and you probably have such an outside the box way of thinking that you need something, right? Especially with your Mercury is in Scorpio too. It's combust, but still, you know, um, which leads me, I'll talk about like the lack of air, like combust Mercury. It is important to really, really, uh, you know, with the North Node in air, also dial down on communications and dial down on like being able to see from other people's perspectives and not falling into the trap of dogmatism, right? Understand that, people have their own truths at their own time. Um, but yeah, like overall, like as a Scorpio, with all that Scorpio energy, it's all about going beneath the surface, right? It's all about like going into the underground, going into the areas of like the occult, esoteric, that people inner deep psychology, and that might be a little bit uncomfortable for a lot of people who aren't willing to go there, right? Especially with Mars and Scorpio, such a strong placement. It's in its dignity in Scorpio on the midheaven, so it's even stronger. It's on an angle, so you have a super strong Mars, which can also make up, even though it's not fire, it can make up for, you know, some lack of fire, and then your Uranus rising can make up for some of the lack of air, right? Those are two things. But Uranus rising people, like they'll have like a very unique niche, um, that they can like pour all their creative energy into in this lifetime, right? Um, but it's really really important to always remember, like you like you're not like everyone else, um, and when you're not like everyone else, it's impossible to please everyone else. Um, so yeah, that's really important. So you know, with let me go camera mode a little bit. How about that? So with so there's lots of oppositions, right? You know, because like as a Scorpio sun, you have the same sun and moon as Drake. Um, you know, Scorpio sun, Cancer moon, obviously very emotional. Obviously, you know, you have all this water because you're here in this lifetime to feel your emotions, right? And your family, because the Chiron Cancer, we're, you know, we're here to trigger whatever healing that you need karmically, right? And I read somewhere beautifully, it was Lada who wrote this, Astrolada, that sometimes souls that we really love, like real souls that love us and that we love, will play roles in our lives based on the astrology that like are their sacrifices, and we won't be cool with these people in this lifetime, but it's actually them being a catalyst for something within us, right? Which when I read that, I was like, that's so beautiful and so true. Like it rings so true, right? Um, so okay. So moon and Cancer, obviously, you know, it's in dignity. So moon and Cancer can, you know, typically meet their own emotional needs. Um, as four oppositions though, the closest one would be to um Uranus, or I mean Neptune and well, yeah, you have Neptune, Saturn, Venus all together. So it'd be that, but Uranus is right there. You know, it's 3 degrees away and 4 degrees. They're all and ascendant is with Uranus. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 oppositions to the moon. But first, I want to kind of explain the moon, right? Because you know it gets along very well with Scorpio Sun, as I said, both water. So Scorpio, Cancer Moon, the seventh house can meet its own emotional needs very well, right? I always say that emotions are energy. So energy and motion. So just like a cat, right? When a cat gets in a fight, they shake it off, you know? They shake off. So that's like, let's say there's a Cancer moon and Aquarius moon, for example. Aquarius moon is known for being sometimes a little bit detached from their emotions. Same thing happens to both of them. The Cancer moon might cry about it in the moment, but through that crying, they're able to release the energy. But the thing about water moon sometimes is that I've seen it, um, like this fear, um, once a Cancer moon's hurt. Well, what I was gonna say before that is that sometimes very, very watery people like distance themselves from their emotions because they're too intense. That's just one thing, right? But I see that more with men than women typically because of, you know, the society telling men to not, you know, to not be emotional and all that. But yeah, essentially, you know, moon and Cancer, great attachment to the family. Sometimes like what's interesting because it opposes Uranus. So usually moon opposite Uranus is someone that like wants to get out of the home very early in life, but then moon in Cancer is kind of the opposite, right? They sometimes have difficulty like breaking away from home because they usually, you know, very strong bond to the mother, to the family. But you know, they really like to kind of like retreat, the comfort of their own home, home bodies, all that. Um, but yeah, they can be very emotional, but and it's very important for them to follow lunar cycles, right? Lunar cycles will be very, very important for them. But the fact that you have Jupiter on your moon in Cancer makes you like really, really able to meet your own emotional needs in a way where you can see the whole perspective, right? Where you can see the whole big picture. Um, and it just makes you like internally like optimistic, right? So you have all the Scorpio, but this is like an emotional optimistic, kind of adds like a touch of Sag, right? And it kind of also gives like this kind of like anything is possible, very adventurous way of seeing life, right? So um and then having Sirius, you know, which I think of like as like a second more minor moon right there, conjunct your moon, it makes you just like an amazing nurturer and someone who really, really, really um you know, is just very loving, you know, and it usually speaks to a very good relationship with the mother. Um, the oppositions, we'll see about that, but you know, it's someone who's a born healer, you know, who knows how to nurture people on an emotional level. And Esme, come help me. Esme, come here. Esme, come here, baby.
But yeah, it makes someone really like to kind of like help, it's a big healer kind of aspect. But the fact that it's in the seventh house, right? Um, and also one thing about Sirius in Cancer is that like your ability to nurture is very linked to your relationship with your mother. So the relationship with the mother is massive in this chart, right? Um, because what can happen if there wasn't a good relationship, there can be like this codependency, and that goes to the seventh house moon. Because some people with the seventh house moon, because the seventh house represents other, they can they can take on they can take too much of their emotional well-being from relationships, and and yeah, and that can be like one of the big life lessons, right? There can be a potential for codependency, right? Not saying it's there, but the beautiful thing is that you have Jupiter in the seventh house, which is giving people who have that, it's almost like having a guardian, like Jupiter, whatever house is a guardian angel in that area of life, right? Um, so it gives lots of luck and expansion via relationships. People like I've talked to all kinds of clients, Jupiter in the seventh, who say that they've been very lucky with their partners. But Chiron's there too, so it's like it could also be like lots of healing in relationships. That can be a very great area for you to heal and yeah. But like I said, the Cancer Chiron um seventh house, like there could be wounds and healing in relationship, but also being able to help other people with their relationships. But yeah, always with Cancer Chiron, it's that feeling like misunderstood with family and like some pain around there. Not necessarily that there's like a hateful relationship, but just like it's usually just in your case, it could be that you're, just have very different worldviews, your family, right? It could be that much and just not feeling understood, valued. Like let's say you're an astrologer, right? And I purposely, like want to know nothing about my clients until after I do the reading. So I purposely like don't look at photos. I don't look at anything, right? Of course, I know you've been following me for a while, but I still, like I still try to kind of like stay off Instagram as much as I can because I'm always thinking like, someone, most people that follow me for a while, eventually they get a reading, and I want to be like completely objective. So yeah, but after I tend to follow and whatnot. But you know, it can make one also very, very sensitive to like the feelings and the emotions of their partner. And sometimes they can struggle when they like there can be like a huge emotional amount of like emotional well-being coming from being in a relationship, right? And it can almost dominate the moods and everything. So it's really, it can be a little bit tough for like if single. Um, so that's like, part of the mission is to you know, like learn everyone, I don't care about anything in your chart has to be okay with being single, you know? And I think that seventh house, I consider it myself, I consider BFFs, like those real close BFFs, similar to, it's like a partnership. If you have like a best friend you're always with, like me and Trey, obviously we're best friends. Now we both have girlfriends, but like for probably 3 or 4 years, we were, like literally always together, so that's more of a seventh house relationship, I would say. Um, that's that's a that's kind of a complicated one. I still haven't like fully decided on that one yet, but like, I mean, it doesn't make sense to the 11th house. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so business partners also and clients. So like being able to be working in a way where you're like psychology would be like anything like that, like what like astrology, psychology, anything that gets you deep in the human psyche is amazing. Um, but yeah, like the important thing is like the potential for people pleasing in relationships. So now I want to talk about like how this like goes. So it's all in Cancer. So first of all, the Cancer and the Capricorn axis is activated, right? So what does that mean? Well, that's about uh feminine and masculine, right? And finding the correct balance of those two. So when I see that, like oftentimes there could have been like a recent karmic a switch of gender in recent lifetimes. Um, and sometimes people with that like kind of feel like some kind of difficulty, like not always like so associated with their gender, right? So, okay. So the first house is about you, and it's Capricorn. But it has all these planets in it, right? So, um, you know, a Cap rising is someone who is you know, ambitious, persistent, all these things, right? Usually quite cautious, very responsible. Of course, I told you have Uranus right on there, right? So it's this back and forth between the two. But essentially, if we break down your first house with like multiple goals, right? One, so it's finding that it's still about being like Capricorn. I think of as like success in the sense of honor. Um, and if we think of all these, right? Um, like we talked about the Uranus, so then we talk about Neptune and Saturn, right? Neptune, with the ascendant is it's very much about it it makes one almost like want to take their dream world, right? And implant it on their everyday life, right? Very, very kind of dreamy and very artistic, very sensitive, very amazing imagination. And they need like this artistic creative outlet, or life can kind of feel, it can lose its magic, right? Um, but it can also make people project on you, and make it kind of really, really important to have boundaries, right? Because it's like people can sometimes not see you for what you are, right? And project their own ideas of what you represent and whatnot. So then, with the Saturn, right? Saturn conjunct ascendant in Capricorn, which how many degrees is it? 6.52. That just adds kind of like an element of like inhibition. Like a lot of people with Saturn rising alone, like can be quite shy, can have some issues with like, self-expression, but then Uranus is the most important one, and Uranus is not shy. Oh my God, look who just came. Look who just came. My Astro Kitty. You gonna work, Esme? You gonna work? Thanks for coming. You came last reading too. You helped me. What? Say it again. What, Esme? 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 What does that mean? Esme? 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 What? What's that supposed to be? Esme, say it again. Esme? Okay, two seconds. So, yeah, sometimes with Saturn ascendant, like it can be difficult to like. Do you see how there's all these elements playing, right? So, and I see this a lot because you're born in '89, so that was like a lot of people in that kind of the years around that they have the Neptune Uranus, like um Saturn very close. So yeah, it's kind of like a clusterfuck, and the way I see it is that they play out in different ways, right? And the one that's the closest is the most important. But because Saturn is your chart ruler, it makes it super, super important too. And it really does bring that theme of like of being your own person, but then also being very responsible, and that restriction versus expansion. Well, expansion is more Jupiter, but individualism versus traditionalism, like these kinds of themes, right? But it makes you very hardworking, very responsible. But then like the Uranus is like, no, fuck that. I need the fun. And the Neptune's like, I need the magic, you know? So you see how they kind of, and then you have Venus there too. And Venus is like, I need the beauty, right? Venus rising people are beautiful people. They have auras that are just very, and the thing that's cool, that's interesting, like a lot of times Cap rising people get confused for Scorpio rising. Interesting, huh? It's because the midheaven is Scorpio typically, like yours. So the way that you're seen on social media, for example, is quite Scorpionic. If someone were to look at you, they probably think Scorpio, right? Um, but there can also be like sometimes there can be like a coldness, external coldness, like the Cap rising. And by the way, I'm just telling you, like, I've purposely never looked at a photo of you. I do that with every client. And I just don't spend that much time on Instagram, to be honest. Like, I literally can't, like lately, especially. But yeah, like, it's like people with Venus rising, right? They tend to be beautiful and have an aura that's very attractive. Um, and with Neptune and Venus conjunct, right? That's with Saturn there. It's very interesting how that might play out in relationships. We'll get into that in a sec. But like, overall, like just with Venus, and then obviously, yeah, there's so much going on in the descendant, but yeah, it just creates a very warm energy, right? So it kind of undoes like the coldness that the Saturn. So very interesting, so many things going on. But like it creates an aura that's attractive, and makes like creativity play like a big role in your life. Now let's ask Esme, our master cat. Esme, can you help me, please, baby? Okay, please do your work. Look at the thing in the chart that I'm supposed to look at. No, Esme, look. No, Esme, look. Oh, really? Really, Esme? You kind of look like you meow. You see that? She meowed. She's really good. But she looked like right at the Juno. It was like I couldn't tell. I usually know. I think she was looking at the Juno. She's like almost looking like either like now I'm confused. It was like at the Juno and the Black Moon Lilith, but it could have been just at the 11th house cusp. Or oh my God. Oh, she talked about the conjunction of Juno and Black. No. So we're gonna go through all possible Esme scenarios because she won't repeat herself. She's like, I'm done working. Esme, drinking out of her flower fountain that she psychically told my friend Patsy that she wanted this exact model. And look at her drink out of it. Little interlude. Can you see this? Oh, you can't see. Let's get some light on Esme. You spill water, Esme. Have some water, Esme. Everyone wants to see it. Okay, well, I don't know if it caught any of that because it was dark. God, your haircut's bad. Okay, where did chart go? So, anyways, well, I guess she's talking about the Libra. We'll see. We'll go there in a little bit. You want to give it another try, Esme? Come on. What were you looking at? Look. Okay, yeah, definitely the Juno. Thanks, Ed. So, okay. So yeah, anyways, so with the first seventh house, right? When you have a lot of planets in those two houses, right? It's Aries, Libra. It creates this energy where relationships, right? Like the far like one extreme of seventh Libra is codependency. I can't live without my partner. I can't live without being. I can't be happy without being in a relationship. That's like the extreme. The extreme of first house Aries is like I'm not willing to compromise at all. I'm not willing to do shit. Like my way or the highway. That's my way or the highway. That's it. Right. So finding middle ground. And also seventh house is like diplomatic. First house can be, you know, like selfish. Um, But for Tesla, it's also about, it's very good with, it's all about independence, So when you have an ascendant, when your North Node's in Aquarius, ruled by Uranus rising, one of your major karmic goals is to individuate. There's no questions asked, 1,000%. You're here to individuate, especially in the second house. So forming spiritual Aquarian values that aren't linked to anything besides your own true self, your true authentic expression, right? So let's talk about these oppositions, right? So we'll start with, should I just go in order? No, yeah, let's start. It's 7:20. Let's go. Okay, so first let's start with the Neptune, right? So okay, Moon opposite Neptune, it so any hard aspect Moon and Neptune, it's like if the mother, so as you can see, your chart is it's so important, the relationship with the mother and the energy of the mother. A lot of people with that, like I always have to tell them, like, um, you know, if you if your mom had like any kind of negative emotions, right? Um, like when you're growing up, it could be very there's a high potential that you could have like taken some of those on, thinking that they're yours, that they belong to you. So it's really important to like really have boundaries, because Moon opposite Neptune can make energetic boundaries really difficult, and you can be like such a sponge for energy, good and bad. So where you live, who you spend your time with, who you date, all that, so important. Where you work, everything, right? And it makes you drawn to very unusual people also, right? Usually like the spiritual artistic types. But sometimes you have to watch out for con artists and energy vampires, because like with this Neptune conjunct Venus too, like very romantic in love, like very romantic person who sees the highest potential in someone, right? That's the tendency of Neptune energy. But it can kind of you know there can be some over idealism sometimes. There's a huge need to really I guess and it also can create fog around you understanding your true emotional identity, right? So it's like it's really important to have that clear idea of your identity, which comes from your spiritual journey within, right? And also through your like anything artistic and spiritual that you do is gonna like leapfrog you in that way. Now, the Saturn one is different, right? And I think I'm forgetting anything about the moon in Neptune. Let me think. Moon. Yeah, it's just like energetic boundaries, and um people sometimes can be a little bit paranoid with that too, and it just speaks to the importance of leaning into your Capricorn energy, which is that Earth, and Earth gives us the ability to be stable, it gives us the ability to kind of like day after day be a similar version of ourselves, right? If we lack Earth, we don't have that, like me. Um, but yeah, yeah. So you can really take lots of emotions by osmosis. Like if you're around people with bad vibes, like you can literally take it on and think that it's your own. But yeah, it really can be like, so it's like sometimes there's like an overactive imagination, right? And like yeah, so it's really important to like be honest and to not, like self-deception, right? Um and it can also lead to like different insecurities, and like people taking advantage, yeah, people, and also feeling like misunderstood, victimized, like all that kind of stuff, right? um and also, anything Neptune, like you have to watch out for any kind of addictions, as a Cancer, like I was saying, Cancer moon, sometimes once they get hurt, they don't want to be vulnerable again, they crawl back in the shell. And you know so the Neptune energy with the moon can it could speak to potential escapism. So it's important for that to be artistic or physical. It's positive, right? But yeah, this one is all about like more increased kind of spiritual self-awareness, yeah, it's just like ultra compassionate, but it just speaks to like the need to really, really protect your energy. And yeah, what else? Yeah, so the mother thing's huge, 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 because with all these oppositions, it's like it really is dependent. Like I mean, like the early nurturing slash mother, like um yeah, it's super impactful for those. So moon up I want to go with Saturn or Uranus. Let's just go like Saturn, Venus, Saturn. Let's just whatever. So okay, so this is moon opposite Uranus or Saturn, excuse me, is like one of the most difficult. Because moon, obviously like Saturn and moon in hard aspect can be melancholic, depressive. It can make one feel lonely. And you know, just like lots of obstacles, especially for the first 30 years. Um, in terms of making like deep emotional connections. There'd be lots of like shyness about expressing emotions. And like once again, like I cannot stress enough how important like the early relationship is with the mother in determining the adult relationships, right? If the mother was too strict, cold emotionally, not enough emotional support, which the Chiron in Cancer would indicate that that could be the case. It can be very difficult, right? And it's all about sharing emotions and being able to trust. And that also goes back to you see the South Node square Pluto, right? Like if that energy of in all that Scorpio energy can make it hard to trust people, right? Um, so yeah. Um, it's really like the more you just have to work your ass off at being vulnerable and showing your emotions. And it's just that first step is just like being able to do it. And I'm sure by the Saturn return that you've overcome a lot in this way. It's a lot harder early on. Um, but yeah, there can be lots of fears of like getting close to people that comes from the past life energy of being potentially deceived, right? Um, so yeah, but like with anything with Saturn gets easy with better and better with time, and Moon Saturn with over time, creates someone who is very emotionally loyal, very emotionally responsible. Um, but there's that need to learn to kind of like loosen up, right? Sense of humor. And that's with having lots of Capricorn, lots of Scorpio. And I know someone who has like all their chart in those two. Sometimes they can, and I know various people, one who has literally everything in those two, they can be like overly serious. So it's like humor is like the highest energy, you know what I mean? And back to like the Neptune one, I would say that like the highest energy of that once that's resolved is like it's the high imagination, like high psychic like intuitive abilities. It's beautiful for anything artistic, and being able to really feel like the other energies and feel like spiritual truth, things that people the magic of the world that other people can't feel, right? So okay, so with the Uranus one, right? Um, like I was saying, like that one's it's very interesting and very conflicting because Moon opposite Uranus, like Moon in Cancer, well, Moon opposite Uranus can make emotions kind of back and forth, and it can make it like kind of like a very highly strung, like all over the place emotional life. And usually, like the actual home life, it's like a lot of people with that, like when they're younger, like have to move from place to place if the parents are divorced or just, like it's not always that. A lot of times, like I was saying, like it's tough to tell. Like if you like wanted to like get out of home early, or like I said, lots of Cancer moons like to stick around. So much of your chart, like I'm saying a million times, depends on that relationship with the mother slash the early nurturing, right? Um, but yeah, like I would say that in intimate relationships it can be difficult because it can create lots of distance, and then there can be like this big kind of back and forth between like this huge need for freedom and feeling like if there's any cleanness whatsoever. That's why Esme was looking at your Aquarius Juno, because it's pointing to your look at her. Esme, good job. Good job, Esme. Like, basically like the perfect mate being someone who is has their own stuff going on, who can give you that freedom, and where you can still be on your North Node journey of individuality, which does require freedom. So it might be a more unconventional relationship, and someone who's willing to kind of, like, for example, with me, like me and my girlfriend, we sleep in different bedrooms. I don't like the idea of sharing a bedroom. I like having my own space. We do our own thing. We have our own lives. We live together, and it's chill, you know? So it's really, figuring out what works for you and being able to communicate it, which that's a big thing with the lack of air. It's really, really, that's kind of the challenge. And with North Node Aquarius, right? It's like being able to communicate in a diplomatic way what works for you and your boundaries with the Neptune one. So yeah, but it is kind of like very, very ingenious energy, as I said before, with the ascendant conjunction. But like what can happen is, like, with the Saturn opposition, it can make it difficult to, and with even the Neptune one, to form these, like, these deep, meaningful, stable relationships early on, which can lead to problems, or inexperience, until one starts to feel or heal, not feel. So yeah. It's all, but like everything in life, it's all about your conscious awareness and all the breakthroughs that come through psychology, astrology, whatever it is, but it's all about learning to, like, ground yourself and slow down, and have stability, understanding your emotions. The more you can understand your emotions, and that goes back to the Pluto square, right? Understanding all that that's bubbling under the surface, that's when everything changes. So yeah, it speaks to, like, this like the compromise between, like, excitement, Uranus, and restriction, kind of like, and even like boredom of Saturn, Um, so it's like, yeah, it's kind of like the Uranus rising is kind of like mad genius energy, right? So then we have, the moon in Venus, and what happens with moon opposite Venus, right? So Venus in the first is like, there is this, like, big need you have to, like, to be your own person, as I keep saying, right? But then there's a lot of emotional nurturance that comes and emotional needs that come from being in a relationship. So it's like how to balance those two out, because the Venus in Capricorn is an energy that, you know, Venus and Caps, they tend to date older. They want maturity. They want, and Juno in the 10th would want someone who, probably has their shit together, like, career wise, and, like, is, really passionate about what they're doing, and all that. But like, it really is another one, like, I'm just gonna say every time, like, where the early relationship with women, especially the mother, like, is so impactful. um and however that, yeah. um but like, it is also another potential for codependency, right? Because it does give that strong need for companionship, um and not wanting to be alone is what happens a lot with this, right? Sometimes people with this, like feel like they cannot be alone, right? So until that lesson is learned, relationships will be very difficult, and they can sometimes use, like, questionable tactics to, like, keep the person, like, with you. And then with the Uranus opposition, it can be just like, this back and forth of, like, I want you, now I don't want you. Yeah, so it's tough, right? But it's all about seeing the repeating patterns, and once again, using that Scorpio energy, Scorpio Mars, right? Scorpio Mars gives someone, it's that spiritual warrior, but it's that person who has that real strength, and you can never keep a Scorpio down, right? To, like, really, really look at their darkness and understand that you're taking on so much karma in this lifetime, which is beautiful, right? Um, but all the low Scorpio stuff, the possessiveness, jealousy, um, the kind of power struggles. So it's all about learning to be happy alone, once again, right? And self acceptance. And then only after that's there, like, can like real relationships, you know, come in. So, so yeah, it's interesting, right? Because, there's that conflict, the conflict like overall between your needs, first house, and the needs of, you know, others. Um, so it's like, how do you find a balance between those two, right? Um, it's difficult. It takes the right type of relationship, and that's why my genius cat Esme looked at your Aquarius. Or I'm crazy, Esme. I'm sorry, Esme. It's a Libra. Your North Node Aquarius. My bad. Shit. Sorry. Um, it's different. So it's more so delete the thing I said about like although maybe I was meant to say that. Maybe there is some truth there, you know? About the part about like the partner being like kind of like their own person, all that, and very well, the thing with Libra, it's like it's a very beautiful, stable type of partner, you know, where it's based on fairness and based on, you know, and it sextiles the South Node, so it could be, you know, karmic relationships that you bring into this lifetime. Um, but overall, you know, like the fact that Black Moon Lilith is conjunct that, which is what you may have been looking at, could show that like, you know, maybe it's in like these really advanced relationships that some of that Scorpio energy comes out. I know what I'm missing. Merlin Stone. But yeah, Libra, like so the 10th house part, the part about career and like, you know, it's more Capricorn energy and love. So it could definitely be about like, you know, really wanting that mature, that mature partner, right? Really wanting that mature partner. But yeah, Libra, Juno, they want things to be fair. They want things to be balanced. They want drama free, you know, and understanding, patience, and beauty in the relationship. Someone who really, you know, someone who can really see them and who they can see, you know, for all the best parts. Because the thing about Venus conjunct, right? So now we talk about the conjunctions, right? Venus conjunct um Saturn, or yes, Venus conjunct Saturn. That so that's an interesting one because the conjunction, it gives this amazing ability to have it does create like a shyness in someone who's usually quite inhibited in personal relationships. But there can be like, but like gets better after 30. So usually like Saturn, Venus, it's like the most important relationships will come after the Saturn return, right? Um, but like it can, yeah, there can be like a big fear of commitment, right? And a fear of letting go in relationships. Um, especially if the parents were like very strict and didn't allow you to express yourself fully. Um, and there can also be like, you know, feelings of not being good enough, all that, right? Because Venus is self-love and Saturn can restrict that. Um, but it's all about like the best part is that in love astrology, Venus and Saturn is the glue that keeps relationships together. So it's actually saying that you have potential for really long lasting relationships, right? And very karmic ones. And it makes you very faithful, very loyal. But you want relationships, especially in Capricorn, Venus conjunct Saturn, you want relationships that have very firm foundations. You don't want to just jump into relationships. You want to really like weigh them out and make sure, especially with the Scorpio, very cautious, right? Which is good because the Venus in Neptune conjunction is like can be sometimes too rose-colored glasses, too over idealistic. It's not a bad thing, but it can show itself in like seeking perfection in a partner, and then you know, kind of fairy tale Disney stuff, right? And then there's like some disillusionment when you know, these imperfections like, you know, are impossible, like no human's perfect, you know, when those come up, the person with this sometimes can just be like, I'm out. So, you know, it's really about like facing the realities of your own imperfection and then being able to face that in other, right? Um, and you know, the highest energy of this combination is you know, the highest energy of this combination is just like the most amazing kind of like soul mate romance, right? Like Neptune, and artistically, it doesn't get much better. But like with Saturn, it could kind of inhibit some of the artistic ability. But like Venus and Neptune is the imagination, the inspiration. Neptune, right? Van Gogh, think about his Starry Night painting. The inspiration came from, um, you know, like Neptune, and then the ability to paint that was the Venus. So it's really linking these two together. Um, so yeah. Um, hmm. Let's see. All right, so Mercury. Okay, no, it's conjunct. Yeah. Um, so we understand what's going on here, right? And the way to balance, you know, like how a lot of the relationships, um, the relationship success or whatever. I don't really like saying relationship success, but like, you know, it's mimicking the inner work that you're doing completely. I know that's something that blanket statement, like people can say that about every relationship, but like, you know, for you especially, right? And you get a lot of clues in that area of life. Um, but the being happy alone thing is a major, 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 major. And if you're there, congratulations. Um, if it's something that like kind of comes in, like most things in life that like, you know, like kind of comes and goes, like, you know, it's all a process at the end of the day, right? Okay, so how does the Scorpio energy support all this, right? Well, I told you about that it works really well for, you know, with the Cancer. Um, you know, these so these three signs, right? Cancer about safety, it's about security. Scorpio is about, you know, power, but the real kind of power, which is internal power, it's about transformation, right? And Capricorn is about stability, groundedness, legitimacy, loyalty, honor. So you put that, and then you have the first house, 11th house, seventh house. Those are all, well, 11th, 7th and 11th are very relational, right? This Libra house and Aquarius house. So, you know, friendships and relationships are very important parts of your life. But we could see how potentially, and it's really like the first house is the house of you, 11th house of friends, seventh house of relationship, and that's like we're all. So it's a very like those three areas of life are so massive, right? Which it's crazy, right? So it's a very relational kind of energy. But how do you balance those three out? Because your son's the 11th house, which makes it so like you know, friendships and groups of people and your major life goals are very, very important to you. And very like where you're really meant to shine. Um, so, you know, with the fact that you have Mars on the midheaven in Scorpio, it can you know, in 11th house midheaven, like it makes you really want to transform yourself through your career. And midheaven black and Lilith could be like you know, with Scorpio and Mars, it could be a very witchy, like a very witchy type of like dharma, you know, like very esoteric and transformational. And I think like your outer journey is meant to mimic your inner journey, right? Um, you know, with Mars where it is in Mars in Scorpio is not the person you want as your enemy, right? So much passion, um, and you know they go towards their transformation in a fearless way, right? And Mars in 11th house makes someone a leader in their groups. And they have this urge, they go towards like their goals, their larger than life goals, like their big life goals that take a lifetime to really you know manifest. And but it's on the midheaven, so it's like, you know, perhaps you're meant to work like, yeah, in a humanitarian way, like with people, like-minded people. But you know that Mars on the midheaven makes a very, very strong person, even like an athlete, perhaps, or someone who's like very, you know, like Mars on angles. A lot of athletes had that, right? Um, Mars conjunct Scorpio or Pluto, excuse me, and Scorpio, it's like, whoa, that's like the volcanic energy of like when you get into something, like you go full blast, you know? And the fact that it's connected to your dharma, I don't like calling it career, but your dharma is just phenomenal. And you know, you're definitely someone who, you know, once they get yeah, very resourceful, you know, and so much energy when you need it. It's like this dense ball of energy that you have. But also it can be a volcanic temper. So it's like there's a need to have a physical outlet, right? And the lack of fire, you know, really need to push yourself to find, you know, outlets to get that energy out. But like, yeah, like with all these energy, it's very deep. You know, you're a very deep person. So that's another thing with the connections is that that, like, you know, it's gonna be hard for you to be someone to have like small talk, you know. So yeah, so it all goes back to the North Node of the second house, you know. North Node of the second house, right? It's just like your own personal set of values, as I said, right? Leaving behind um maybe a potential to like um derive your power from an external and really deriving it from within. And that's what I keep saying about Scorpio is that the real power is when you find that power within yourself and you realize, like, you know, for Scorpio, they don't have to push it onto other people. You know, they don't have to, um, you know, try to control anything. Your natural leader, you know. Um, so, you know, it's very good. But what can happen also in North Node Aquarius, there can be that struggle between what you need and your dedication to others, right? As I was saying before. So a lot of times it is hard to like set aside kind of like some of that Leo stuff um to serve the world, right? But ultimately it's you know, you can still be a star but then serve the world. Um yeah. So Palace in Pisces in the third, oof, that's really amazing for intelligence. Just someone who wants to acquire deep spiritual knowledge. Um, and you know, Palace in Pisces definitely is like open third eye, can merge their mind with the universe. Very artistic too. It's very strong placement. It's right on my sun. Same, like right on my sun, my Mercury. Interesting. That's our connection. Um, so yeah, I think just like in relationships, like I was saying, like, you know, that's an area where you heal a lot. And I think that um yeah, I mean, I actually like what I was saying about like the potential like Aquarius relationship being good for you. I think that it's because of your North Node that I said that. I mean, I said it on accident because I thought that this or that the Juno was in Aquarius, but you know, for a partner, you need to have someone who isn't pushing you away from your North Node and North Node Aquarius. You know, you're because what can happen in relationships, especially with the Moon, the seventh, is that one can merge with their partner and become, like I always say, like you can become the composite chart, right? So that's difficult, right? So it's important to do like maybe do things like energetic resets, right? But um, you know, the secure this, you know, the Scorpio moon needs that emotional security. They want to start a family, right? They want that, right? They want that real emotional closeness. So it really is a balancing game at the end of the day. And always asking yourself, okay, am I going towards my individuation fully? And am I going towards my, you know, and are my relationships fulfilling, right? And then also I think that you can like that you have like a lot of past life talents that you can tap into. Um, and yeah, like I think like you know, there's a big need to avoid distractions, you know, especially just like people who are distractions. So that's another big lesson here. Um, and then you know, Pluto being in the 11th, you know, it can sometimes and Pluto and Mars in the 11th, like it can sometimes bring conflicts with friends too, conflicting groups. But it also like Pluto 11th can make one have like very deep, profound friendships. But also like the goal of the friendships and of the groups you join should be to push yourself away from conditioning and help heal that trauma, right? Because trauma could have come past lives within groups, right? eighth house south node, right? Like, um, so there can potentially be like, maybe a fear of that, right? Polarity point, in the fifth is, speaking to how authentic self-expression is really, really your way towards success, mixed with, that deep spiritual relationship with yourself. Um, yeah, best in the first house initial with that, like they can be very self-focused. But it's really good at it makes one very good in terms of work at being able to like focus on their own like self-appointed goals. Good, good for achievement. And in Capricorn, it makes someone a very disciplined worker and someone who gets the job done and people can count on them. And let's pull this up. I'm just staring at my computer. Wow, you're the same ones that guys for me. So yeah, it's just like Quar on the sun. It's just like this very mystical placement. It could also relate to some trauma though. It could relate that like really it's like speaking to like this like real intuitive muscle, this real potential to tap in and to really like the more that you work on like meditation, affirmations, visualizations, breath, all these things, like it creates this amazing mystical potential, which should be obvious by now that that's all over your chart. Ooh, lust. So you have lust with Jupiter and the moon. Lust is the sexy asteroid, and at work, it's one that I'm sure, like, I'm not like sold on most asteroids unless I really, have seen them. And like, for example, my girlfriend, she has lust rising. I know a friend who has lust, Venus. I see it all over. Lust Jupiter just makes someone, like very sexual and, like just like yeah, like it's very erotic. And on the moon it also will have like an element of this like very like kind of sexy energy that um it's in the seventh. So yeah, it makes someone I always say there's beautiful, cute, sexy, and hot. Like I think that lust is it's what it sounds like, right? It doesn't mean that one's promiscuous or anything. It just means that one but it's in the ascendant, so it's on the ascendant. But like, it means that it just makes one, yeah, like sexual, like yeah, there's like a kind of like a kinkiness most likely. But I don't really like to talk about that because I am a polite man. But I'm just saying that's there. You can research lust conjunct Jupiter, lust conjunct Moon. But yeah, not too many. Because you have a lot of planets and stuff on angles, so there's not really much. And you have like Mars on your midheaven, you have Ceres on your descendant and Moon on your descendant, and you have Uranus on your ascendant. So yeah, and we'll see one thing. See if I can find anything about this. No. All right. Well, that is all. I hope you enjoy. What an interesting chart. Oh, also Vertex and Leo, eighth house. Didn't talk about that. It's through these intense experiences that you find your doorway to higher awareness. And ultimately you in Leo, it's like through fun and through creativity, as I've said, right? That's how everything, like letting go, right? Because I said there's like a potential for over seriousness. So being able to just like let go, do things that are fun, do things that are creative, just for the sake of them, finding passions like that is like how a lot of the healing happens. All right, thank you for waiting. Appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed. Hope this is everything you wanted. It's a very, very interesting chart with a lot going on. And, there's just a lot of variables here, right? There's just a lot that depends on the experience with the mother and the early nurturing. Um, but the karmic goals that I laid out at the start are, and throughout, are very evident. And yeah, so hope you enjoyed. Peace.